Hi there. And it's National Diabetes Day today. So I thought what I'd do is I would continue with my glucose monitor experiment. I'll just get that up on the screen so you can see. And the problem with the glucose monitor for carnivore is pretty boring, isn't it? It's just telling me my little notification saying I'm going live. Yes, here I am. I'm actually live. But if you can look at this, I've already eaten twice today, and it's a flat line. And that's the thing with the continual glucose monitor experiment is, well, one of the things actually that's happened is I've been doing lots of experiments over the last 5 years, and uh, it's taken its toll, actually. I don't know how people like Nick Norwitz do what they do, because for me, 5 years of doing testing, it's not good. And some of the tests I've done where I've tried slightly more carbs, like I say, I've had messages from people that know me, people that have had consults with me as well, and they've actually said you look terrible. It's really getting to you, and it really does get to you. But what I wanted to also do was show you some of the results that I had from actually using the continual glucose monitor, so you can see that what you're being told isn't necessarily the case. So I'm going to screen share some of those in a minute, and basically we'll go through those results, and you can read from it what you like, actually. So I've got a PDF all ready to screen share. I mean, one of the things I would say, and I think this is one of the things about the continual glucose monitor, is even those people that make them and promote them often put a disclaimer in about they're not really for diabetic management. They're just for sort of knowledge and health benefits and those sort of things. So I'm going to go to screen share. I'm just going to show you, I think if people remember my live experiment, where I ate a secret food and then we watched the continual glucose monitor just go up, which was incredible to do it live, and everyone was guessing what I'd eaten. At the end, pretty much most people had guessed, well, this is what happened. So throughout the day, what we're looking at, the ranges here, we want to be between these dotted lines for people that are looking on the audio. Looking on the audio, listening on the audio, I will try to describe the graph. So this is showing sort of some ups and downs, some experiments and stuff like that. But then by 12 o'clock, I was ready to do my live at 6 o'clock. I did a 6 o'clock live. So there were 6 hours between eating and doing my live. And I'm pretty much sort of in the middle of the range. And then I did some exercise, actually, which pushed my blood glucose up, but then I let it I let it go down. And the exercise was only 10 minutes on an X3 bar. And I didn't really push myself. I just wanted to see how much it would push it. But even though I did that, that was at 4 o'clock, and my blood glucose started to drop. So that was good. And I was going to go live. I went live, and we watched one banana push my blood glucose up from just over halfway, way past where I want it to be, and up to 151 milligrams per deciliter, or 8.4 millimoles per liter. And that was at 6:39, which was right in the middle of the live. So that if you find that hard to believe, I did do it live. That was the whole point. So that was just one banana. So that was at 6 o'clock in the evening. I'm going to show you a couple of other experiments I did. And this one will shock you as well, I think, because this is good old-fashioned oats, banana, and a teaspoon of honey. And just to get some reference here, one of the things I was absolutely determined to do was not fudge the data, not deliberately eat certain things to make a certain result. I, therefore, only used 40 grams of oats. This is not a lot of oats. Now, one of the things in, nutrition science, or science in general now, but, that's not a lot of oats. Okay, I don't think that is representative of what most people believe. I think that's a lot less. So for those that are listening on the audio, I've got a tumbler, which you put water in, and it's barely a third full of oats. So I did 40 grams of oats. I did 5 very small thin slivers of banana and 1 teaspoon of honey. But I didn't do it as in a whole load of oats, a whole load of banana and honey. The first thing I did was just eat some of the oats. And that's the first spike you can see. I just ate oats. Now, this is the story which I find really interesting, is because this was my go-to breakfast right until the end of my 40s, when I started to realize that I was completely hoodwinked by this breakfast for champions. By the way, this PDF that I'm showing you, if you want it, you just message me and say, I quite like the PDF of all those results. And that'd be great. So anyway, right, going back to the story. So I did the 40 grams of oats. They were soaked overnight. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning. And I thought, well, I used to have this. I don't know how much honey to have. I don't know how much banana to have. But let's just taste it to see how much honey and how much banana I need to put in, because it's going to be horrible without it. I was absolutely convinced of that. Now, you've got to remember that from my teenage years and even before, both my parents believed in the food guidelines. So I had actually been brought up on this way of eating, avoiding red meat. I know Zoe Harkham doesn't like me saying this in the same sentence. Avoiding saturated fat. I'm not saying the red meat has the saturated fat. In fact, a saturated fat ratio of 2% to 98% not saturated fat is what you get from a ribeye. 98% of a ribeye is not saturated fat. It's only 2%. But anyway, I avoided red meat, saturated fat. I had skimmed milk. And my go-to breakfast was always porridge oats or oatmeal. And it was normally with a little bit of fruit and sometimes some maple syrup, sometimes a little bit of honey. Okay. And I thought that was the breakfast of champions. So I assumed it was going to not be very sweet, just the oats on its own. But it was really sweet. It was really, really sweet. So I ate a little bit of just oats because I wanted to see what just oats did. And as you can see, if you've got the video, it gave me a huge spike. But then I let things settle because I wanted to add the banana and I wanted to add the honey. And I tell you what, the spike there is incredible. So it had gone up. It had pretty much gone up to about 135, looking at that graph, that first spike of just the oats. So just oats, just 40 grams of oats spiked it so much. That's the other thing. I am using the word spike because that is a spike. We'll come to that later with some sourdough bread and some just normal bun that you would have around a burger. We'll look at not spikes, but still some problems. But that is a spike without a shadow of doubt, and then it drops. And like I say, if you're listening on the audio, just email me at zerocarbcoach. That's all spelled out, z@gmail.com. I'll send you the PDF. And once I'd added the banana and honey, wow, 160 milligrams per deciliter, 8.9 millimoles. And that was at 8:39 in the morning. And I think it's a testament to my insulin sensitivity that my body really cleared that toxic amount of glucose out of my system very quickly. And then we go back to normality. Like I say, I've shown you my continual glucose monitor for today for comparison to that spiky, terrible graph. And you can see there, it's flat as a pancake. And I've eaten twice today. Right. So what was the next thing I did? Thank you, Kelly. Going to share this with some people who say it's only a few oats. They are healthy. Which, thank you, Kelly. That is the message that I want to get up. I want to get across to people. Yeah, that is a few oats. And most people won't eat just a few oats. They will definitely have the other things. So I'm glad I did it in two phases there, because it shows just the oats and then it shows the oats with the banana, which wasn't even a full banana, and just a teaspoon of honey. So please do share it. I think that would be great if you could share it. So what was the next thing I did? Well, I compared eggs and bacon. Then I had some yogurt, and then I had some orange juice, because this was another thing that I was told was really healthy for me. Freshly squeezed orange juice. And this glass, this tumbler, which I'm showing you, which is a normal sort of size glass for water fluids, it's a very small glass. That's how much orange juice I had. And I had it in two halves. I had half, I let my insulin work with it, and then I had it again. And Thank you. I've got bigger stickers here. Obviously, a fan of Monty Python. Bigger stickers. So yes, thank you for saying afternoon all. By the way, if you want to go do a super chat, that really helps. If you want to help me do all this stuff, the continual glucose monitor was £59. By the way, I do have a discount code on that PDF. If you're looking to do 2 weeks of continual glucose monitor, get 10% off. But anyway, I'm not saying you've got to fund these experiments, but they help. It helps if you get a little bit of money. And the glucose keto monitor strips, because I also did some finger pricking at about 60 quid. But anyway, I'm just telling you. So look what happened when I had bacon and eggs. Bacon and eggs. Look at that. Hardly anything, if anything at all. And then also yogurt earlier on in the day. So bacon and eggs was my normal breakfast. Yogurt there. But in the afternoon, so lots of clearance, I had orange juice, and that took me up to 112 milligrams per deciliter, 6.2 millimoles, and that was at 4 o'clock. All right, still in range, but that's only a glass of orange juice. That's all that is, a glass of orange juice. Why am I doing this? Because it's National Diabetes Day. I'm a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes, so I want to get this across to people as much as possible. So here we are, 7.8 millimoles, by the way, is the threshold we've been using. So 140 milligrams per deciliter is what we're trying to not get over. So we've already seen that oats do that, bananas do that. Oats, banana, and honey does that. But look at this. Eggs and bacon don't do it. Decaffeinated coffee doesn't do it. That's a pretty flat day. So even with eggs and bacon and a coffee, 95 milligrams per deciliter, 5.3 millimoles per litre was the highest. And as you can see, pretty much the average there is very low. The other thing you need to take into consideration is how much insulin is being produced to produce these numbers. So I would imagine not much insulin if your blood glucose is like this. And again, as you've seen from me continually showing today's glucose monitor, as soon as I stop introducing these other foods, I don't even get these erratic sort of slightly up and down movements. Literally, once I'm back to carnivore, it's flat as a pancake. So yeah, definitely if you want to comment, by the way, you can. If you've got a question, you can put that in the chat. So the other thing I wanted to say about is when you have a protein meal, what actually happens to your blood glucose is it drops. Because protein takes about 5 times as much energy to digest as a fat or a carbohydrate. And your body might detect this as you going hypoglycemic. So this infamous, protein spikes your blood glucose is not actually accurate. What happens is you get a slight decrease in blood glucose, which is picked up because you are using 5 times the amount of energy to digest it. Once it's ingested, you start to digest. That will take up energy. That brings your blood glucose down slightly, and then it starts to go up because glucagon comes in and kicks in with a little bit of gluconeogenesis, which is just the making of new glucose to make sure that you are not going to go hypoglycemic. I think in this PDF, I also have some of the experiments that show that the protein doesn't immediately become blood glucose, which many people seem to think. Anyway, let's go on to the next thing. So here is the thing I want to talk about, which is the sourdough bread, which is being pushed recently by a lot of people, and then just a normal bun, and then just 10 French fries. Wow. Now, I do hope if you're listening to the audio, you get the PDF, because this was interesting. This also explains that phrase, area under the curve. So the sourdough bread did not cause a spike, but look what happened. It went up and it stayed up. So this purple section, this shading, is what's called the area under the curve. It's elevated and it stays quite elevated, and you get this big chunk. Rather than a spike, you get sort of like a mountain range from the sourdough. The way the CGM has worked is it hasn't included also this little bit in the middle there, but that is all one effect from the sourdough bread. And again, not much. You took in a slice of sourdough. Right. So we let that happen. That finished by 11. And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to have a beef burger with a bun, an actual bun. Whoa! And that did a very similar thing to the sourdough bread. Now, who eats a bun and just a burger? Not many people. Most people will have some fries. So I let that settle a little bit. And the fries were at the side. I decided to have 10 fries. That picture there looks like a certain outlet's fries, but they were actually quite good good as in the best fries you could get. I didn't deliberately pick the worst ones. And wow, to 148 milligrams per deciliter, 8.2 millimoles at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I have this huge blood sugar spike. So that's a nice graph because you can see the difference between a spike and a lower response, but more area under the curve. So that's that. Kelly is saying, be great to understand how the glucose level relates to being in ketosis. Does keeping your levels even automatically mean you're using ketones? That's a really good question. So in answer to that question, that's why I also have been doing the Keto Mojo, because there is a little bit of nuance to it. The idea is that as your blood glucose is lower, you will probably need more ketones. And that does basically bear fruit, that theory. Of course, there's other things that can put your blood glucose up. For instance, my 5-a-side football. So when I went up, when I played football last night for an hour, it went up. So it went up to about 119 milligrams per deciliter for about an hour because I was constantly running around, because I still do that, even at age 60, even though the medical profession told me I've been in a wheelchair by the time I'm 50. Well, maybe sometimes I'll play like that, but yes, last night I scored quite a few goals and I put my blood glucose up. My ketones didn't really track with it, and that's because it was easier to use the glucose. Yes, guys, hit the like button if you're out there, or subscribe or comment or whatever you want to do. That'd be really handy. But being in ketosis isn't the be-all and end-all of this way of eating. It's pretty good to be in and out of ketosis. Therapeutic ketosis is a different thing. If you're trying to reverse serious conditions, that's a different kettle of fish. But that's what I'll be doing going forward. I'm going to do some of these charts and also superimpose my Keto Mojo so you can see. But I had to buy a load of strips. These experiments, I take my hat off to everyone that's doing these experiments, people like Dave Feldman and Nick Nowitz and all that sort of stuff. It's amazing. Right. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about also how we discuss glucose and how it gets into the cell, because many people talk about how much insulin we need, and it's very, very important. But not all transporters are insulin dependent, as this is showing you. There's 14 glucose transporters, and only one actually is insulin dependent. That's the GLUT4, which we talk about ever such a lot. So that chart is available if you want to get that chart. I just feel like I might have missed something. No, I haven't missed something. We'll come to the next bits in a minute, which is good. Right. So you have got, for instance, the brain and red blood cells use the GLUT1 transporter. It's not insulin dependent, and you wouldn't expect it to be, especially with red blood cells. Liver, pancreas, and intestine, the small intestine, is GLUT2. There is actually a mnemonic to remember where they all are, but I can't say it because it's politically incorrect to say it. Right. Interesting. Gaz is saying, interestingly, the protein. Would that mean that people on a carnivore diet shouldn't take metformin? I don't. Not sure why they would, but mention it for safety, as it stops the liver releasing glycogen, so they might go hypo after eating a high protein meal. Well, I think if you are a diabetic, you are really on it with the numbers. I do have a really good client at the moment that is literally doing an experiment for me with his fast-acting, slow-acting insulin, and we're looking at very precise numbers, which is really helpful. But let's have a look. Let's go into the next bit. So hopefully you like the continual glucose monitor experiment, really. Next thing, Don't get hung up on averages. By the way, all this is in my second edition of my Guide to Blood Test book. All of this, loads and loads and loads of new material. It's much thicker than it. About 130 pages more have been added. So all of this stuff's in here, and other things about iron and ferritin and all the things, EGFR, liver function, kidney function, lipids, of course, LP little a, lots of studies about that. So it's all in that second edition of Guide to Blood Tests. And this is one of the things that I talk about in there, and that is your average can be misleading because, believe it or not, both of those profiles have the same average of just under 100 milligrams per deciliter. So the blue line is showing you huge spikes, huge troughs, huge spikes, huge troughs, just to make it easier for the people on audio only. If your average is 100, but you start the day at 150 and then you drop to 50, then you go up to 150, then you drop to 50, then you go down, up, down, and it constantly going between 150 and 50, your average will be 100. Well, what if you're 105 and 95? Your average will be 100. But just imagine how much you are spiking your insulin. Yeah, I don't like the word spike, but it does evoke exactly what's happening. Constantly going up, you're going to need, huge amounts of insulin in short periods of time, which can be very damaging. So, by the way, just a little recap. There's my continual glucose monitor. As I keep telling you, flat as a pancake. I'm at 4.8 at the moment, because if people say, well, these experiments aren't working because you're diabetic, that isn't the case. 4.8 is 86 milligrams per deciliter, by the way, just for those that are interested. And this is a couple of studies very quickly, which show you when they've experimented in the old days, when they thought protein turns to glucose straight away. They just assumed about half, because this is what science is like, really, in nutrition science, probably about half. So what they did is they gave this person, or these people, the participants, 53 grams of glucose and looked at their blood sugar. And you can see that 53 grams of glucose put their blood sugar levels up. Then they gave this person 100 grams of bread and 25 grams of butter. So that was 53 grams of available glucose. That's why they did that mix. And that put the blood glucose up not as much. It's interesting, isn't it? Blood glucose after 370 grams of apple, which they approximated was 53 grams of available glucose. I don't think that's particularly true, but anyway, that's what the apple did. It spiked it. And then they gave the person some protein from lean beef, 106 grams, because it had 53 grams of available glucose. And that's the bottom line, which is flat as a pancake. So that was that. And then you've got another study here, which was where they doubly labeled the amino acids, which means basically they can track it for recording purposes. It was taken from eggs, so the person was eating eggs, and then they did what's called a glucose flux test, and they looked at their blood glucose, so the dark circles there showing your blood glucose, which is the total amount in their body at that time. So it's done on intervals. So after 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, what happened? Well, in the first hour, none of that amino acid that was labeled was in the bloodstream. So after about 2 hours of eating those eggs with the labeled amino acids, you're still looking at maybe, if you're lucky, 5% of it. Probably not even that. 4 hours, we saw a slight increase, but there's still a huge gap between the person's blood glucose and the labeled amino acids. So what is the body doing there? Well, the body is deciding to recycle those amino acids and make some of them blood glucose. Absolutely. But that's 4 hours later. It's not a spike, and it's not bad, because when you listen to your body, let your body do it, your body's going to do it pretty good. So that's it. By the way, we did get to some other studies. I didn't want to be too boring on National Diabetes Day, but there are other studies that also show that you can have 100 grams of protein at one sitting, and it's totally fine. But I just want to talk about a couple of other things that we don't talk about in this space very much, is like, for instance, concentration. So if you look at an adult, you've got an adult here, an adult male will have 5 to 6 liters of blood. So when I used to do my phlebotomy, I had private blood testing done for about a decade, I would always say to people, it's about 4 teaspoons of blood I'm taking, 4 teaspoons. Don't worry. Might be a little bit more than that, but not much more. Still could make you faint. Okay, the 3 people that did faint in a decade, all 3 were vegetarians or vegans, actually. And I would just say, we're going to take 4 teaspoons of blood. That's what we're going to do, which means that some of your blood glucose will go. So you might have to stick around, just sit here for a bit. This was not even donating blood. This was just for analysis and doing things like well man and well woman. But anyway, the point being, 4 teaspoons was what was taken. Our body needs 1 teaspoon of sugar in these 5 to 6 litres of blood, okay, or 8 to 12 pints, however you want to look at it, however you talk. Right, now, 70% of healthcare decisions are made on the basis of this 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, 3, 4 teaspoons, normally about 4, at one single point in the day. But let's think about other things that happen in one single point of the day. So an adult male has about 5 to 6 litres. The adult female has 4 to 5 litres on average. These are all averages across huge populations, huge generalizations, but it will get the point across. A 10-year-old boy will have about, or 10-year-old girl will have about 2 to 3 litres. Now, if you were to drink a can of Coke, which we approximate as 32 grams, sometimes it's 39 grams, which is about 9 teaspoons of sugar, 9 teaspoons of sugar. We put that into 5 litres or 6 litres. The concentration is not as great as if you put the same can of Coke into a child who's only got 2 to 3 litres. So just to make the sums easy, 6 litres for a male adult and 3 litres for a child, but you put the same volume of sugary liquid in. The concentration is double, isn't it? So, you know, this is when you're out having a family outing and you all have a can of Coke each. It's less impactful on an adult. I am not an idiot. I know that a young child might be more insulin sensitive, but that isn't what's borne out in nature, is it? Because we're now finding that children are getting diabetes. I'm an old person, you know. I've been around the block a long time, but it's not that long ago. Only 15 years ago that we were calling diabetes late onset diabetes, because it didn't happen that much. And sometimes children got it. And that was type 1 because their pancreas wasn't producing enough insulin. Okay. And then something happened in the 70s. What was it? Was it the food guidelines, I wonder? I think it might be, where we kicked out fat and we started saying that high carbohydrate diets were great. And what have we got now? We don't have late onset diabetes. We have diabetes. We have children with diabetes. And that didn't happen, honestly. 15 years ago, having diabetes was unusual. That's why I actually did the training in obesity and diabetes, because I was, at that point, an advanced personal trainer, and I had somebody I was trying to train up, and they wanted to get to the Olympics, and they were type 1, and I wanted to understand it, which is why I do all this stuff. I want to understand it and be able to explain it to people. She got to the Olympics, by the way, javelin throw, but it's great. Anyway, and understanding it is the key. So all of these things that you're told is, you know, these things aren't bad. Somebody earlier said about oats, a little bit aren't bad. You know, they're healthy. They're not. They give you nothing that you need either. There's no protein. There's no fats. And like I say, the reason I wanted to show you that was because I think it's pretty interesting to see that we can look at these things differently and we can test for ourselves. Now, I am a little bit annoyed because when I go online and say oats are bad, just test it for yourself, I get some idiot say, well, I've tested it and isn't that bad. And I said, okay, you can laugh at this. I said, okay, right. What was the reading? What was the quantity of oats? When did you take it? Did you have it with anything else? And I wanted to know how he designed his own experiment. And I was blocked. That was it. No answers, nothing. You know, so it does surprise me. So even on National Diabetes Day, and I'm only saying this because I want to help people, it's crazy how people really, really don't want to engage. They just want to tell you what they think based on no knowledge. And that's the great thing, right? So 15 years ago, when I started doing this role, but not as explicitly low carb or keto or carnivore, when I started, I was still high carb. But I still remember, in the training room, them telling me about, this is how we dose for insulin, and it's always in relation to carbohydrates. So I put my hand up and said, but why don't we just reduce the carbohydrates? Of course, that was laughed out. And then when we started to speak about the potential for these glucose monitors to one day be in the hands of the actual patients so they can control it, none of the people in the room that were on the side of, like the doctors, all the practitioners that were coming in to share their clinical experience, not one wanted that. Not one. And I was just absolutely gobsmacked. So I suppose this is why it's a passion of mine to try and get this information across, that you can test yourself. You can get a Keto Mojo, so you can do glucose and ketones, or you can get a continual glucose monitor if you have the money. Now, this is the annoying thing as well, because, they are expensive. They are very expensive. And, my YouTube channel is a little bit banned, shadow banned, constantly finding that I'm not getting the reach that I used to have. So if you want to comment and share or do a super chat, it's really helpful. You can see for yourself that my views are going down a little bit. I don't think it's because of the content. Anyway, right. Let's have a look here. Right. Let's have a look at the messages here. Yes. Yeah, I don't really want to get into metformin at the moment. It was more to be sort of practical and, to talk about food. Because in the end, all right, what is the best thing to do? Is to stop ingesting the thing that causes the problem. So that's it. So once you start reducing, you could do it in simple ways. If you're watching this and you've not come to this way of eating yet, you could drop additional sugars. So I used to take 2 sugars in coffee, but I didn't drink coffee much. So maybe, I don't know, once a week when I was doing, when I was high carb, because I was moderating it, because I thought, it's very bad for you. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just giving you the story. So I would have 2 sugars. So if you are somebody that has 2 sugars in a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, that could be your start, cutting down your sugar. If you're an abstainer, the best thing is to just stop having sugar. Don't replace it with artificial sweeteners. Just go for it. Eventually your taste buds will change. Going back to my story about the oats, that's what happened to me. I did not believe how sweet those oats were. If you think, for instance, bread isn't sweet, stick a little bit of bread in your mouth and chew it. For those that, again, don't believe, chewing it, don't swallow it, and it just becomes very sweet. The amylase will break down all that starch. It will just turn into glucose molecules, and you will taste that sweetness. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the amylase thing, because actually some people say, well, we got amylase, that's why we might, must be designed to have some carbohydrates. Why would we have amylase? Well, actually, we've reduced how many code for amylase. So 3.5 million years ago, we have Australopithecus, Lucy. She was vegetarian. This is the hominin line. So 3.5 million years ago, we had more genetic coding for amylase than we do now. So, that's because we used to be vegetarian and short and squat and small brains, and we couldn't communicate very much. And sounds like a lot of my best friends from when I used to play football at school. But anyway, and it's interesting that once we started to eat meat, the brain space improved, increased in size. So our brain, our cognitive function improved. More tools were developed, technology, written language. We got taller, we got cleverer because we were eating meat. That's quite simple. Right. I am since 2 years more or less strict carnivore, and I really see no reason to turn back to my old habits. For me, protein is not enough to kick me out of ketosis. Only stress and carbs do that. Yeah. What I was trying to say was, when I showed you that graph, protein is not going to kick you out of ketosis. You're going to have a little dip and then a little bump. But don't worry if it does kick you out of ketosis. It really doesn't matter. Is the guide to blood test version 2 available? Yes, edition 2 is in my hands here. You can, I'll put a link in the description if you want to get that from the Real Food Company. If you want a paperback, a physical copy, you can get that from the Real Food Company. It should be on there. Actually, what I'll do is I will get the link for you now, and I will put them in the chat. And you can give me some feedback, which would be really good, because that would be helpful. So let's put the, let's make sure it's the right link, and then I'll send you to that site there. It should be on there. I just want to make sure it's on there. If it isn't on there yet, it will be. It's not on there yet, but it should be very soon. Let's send you the Amazon link. We'll do that one as well. So the book's on Amazon. Let's copy that link there and I'll put that in the chat. It's definitely available on Amazon. There we go. It's in the chat there if you want a physical copy. And if you want to get an e-copy, I will put that in the chat as well. Just so you've got that as well. Sorry. I wasn't prepared, was I? Wasn't thinking that I was going to have to do that, but someone's asked, so I'll do it. There we go. Right. There's all the links there. Right in the chat. Cool. Because you can get an ebook as well, which has got clickable links to all the studies, because it's all got studies that you can click, and you can read them for yourself, which is great. Have you tried eating a huge bolus of protein in one go, say 500 grams of minced beef, to see if it elicits the tiny insulin bump that Bart K says it does? He says for good thyroid function. Well, sort of, yes. My bacon and eggs is not 2 eggs and a little strip of bacon. I could do that. I've got 500 grams of minced beef. I could do that later. Lewis, who was a very good supporter. Let me just try and get that up on the screen. Bear with me. Like I said, I haven't got a moderator today. I never have a moderator, by the way. So it just takes a little while. I've got my PDF still up. So let me just do this. Clear my screens. And don't want those links anymore, do we? Right, let's get that over there. And we get to some questions. So what we got here? I'm trying to get that up on the screen. Can't get it. Why is that happening? Right. Oh yeah, here we go. Yes. Is dextrose worse for you than sucrose? I haven't actually tested those. Thank you, Susan, for your patience there. Dextrose is also known as glucose. It's a monosaccharide. So that's that. Doesn't really require much digestion. I have done table sugar, and I had a bit of a spike, I suppose, for want of a better word. And sucrose obviously is a disaccharide. So you've got glucose and you've got fructose. Now, that's the other thing about glucose monitors. They're not fructose monitors. So I wasn't measuring my fructose every single time. So when I had that banana, not only did I have a glucose spike, I also hit my liver pretty hard with some fructose. So, yes, dextrose. Where do we get it from? We get it from corn. And it's an additive to make most foods, isn't it? And sucrose, you probably guessed, because of the fructose, you get that from plants. I don't think there's much in it, really. I suppose when you look at how they cook things and put it into ingredients, the dextrose is less sweet, but I suppose that could be because of the fructose. But I haven't tested them, so I don't really know. Dextrose will probably have a higher glycemic index because it is just glucose rather than glucose and fructose. But dextrose is used in the sort of sports drinks, aren't they? And sadly, in some medical treatments, which is, which is sad. The reason I'm looking to the sky there is because this is what happened to my mum. I mean, my mum was given things like Complan and Ensure and all these things. I've had clients recently, who have had kidney problems, and they've been told to take a supplemental drink, and it's just full of seed oils and sugar. There's nothing beneficial in there at all. It's completely devoid of protein or fats. And it's just ridiculous. So, yeah, it's a good question. I suppose when we're looking at what is worse, that was a question, wasn't it? Is dextrose worse for you than sucrose? Like I say, worse glycemic index will go higher with dextrose, but is it worse because you've got fructose in the sucrose? If you're monitoring your blood sugar levels, dextrose would give you the worry, wouldn't it? Because it would go up. And this is the nuance. It's a great question, Susan, such a simple question, but see, this is it about critical thinking. If you was to use your glucose monitor only and had no knowledge of what they were, then you would assume the dextrose was worse because you would get a bigger glycemic index or a glucose spike or elevation of your blood glucose, however you want to word it. But would that be worse than the silent one, which is fructose, which is absent from dextrose? Also, one of the things, Carol's come up with some brilliant data here. Thank you, Carol. This is the trouble speaking off the top of your head. GI score of 100, yes. And a GI score for sucrose is 65. So if we use those raw numbers, if we use the empirical data, then the answer would have to be that dextrose is worse. But is it? Because of the fructose. That's the thing. Great. Thank you for looking that up. But do consider all these things. So insulin sensitivity is important. Your glucose monitor is great, and it gives you a sort of little gateway into looking at this little amount of oats will put your blood glucose up, will spike it unbelievably. That's honestly what I used as a test. I was trying to be fair. If I'd have done the serving that I used to eat, it would have been a very, very powerful graph and got me a lot of clickbait. But unfortunately, that's not how I operate. I can't do that. I just do what I think is sensible. Just maybe it's more powerful to show that such a small amount gives you such a huge leap in your blood glucose. I don't know. But anyway, I think that's it. I'm run out of questions already. I've only been on here for 42 minutes and I've shown you everything I wanted to show you on my PDF. If you want the PDF, just email me, zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. Just got the results. You can do that. The other thing is, I suppose, a little side thing from when I started this, which was about 9 days ago. I got the CGM 10 days ago. The banana that I took the slices from was very interesting because I took the slices and then I left it on the countertop and it's still there because I can't believe how it hasn't deteriorated into mush because there's so much sugar in a banana. Yeah, it doesn't look the greatest thing in the world, but you could cut the horrible bits off. And I will be putting some images up later on and maybe on Instagram and in the school community. If you want to join the school community, it's great, by the way. We do so much. We have a really fun time. Lots of people, like-minded people in the community. We do a live on a Sunday night for we do a live on a Sunday night at 8 p.m. for 30 minutes. And we do a live on a Monday night. And we do that for an hour. You can ask all your questions. And there's so much interaction in the community. We have guests coming in, do lots of stuff like this as well. So anyway, the school community, I'll put a link in the description for that. A comparison of artificial sweetener effects might be good as well, which is a good thing. Like I say, I'm beginning to find that my health is suffering by doing all these experiments. I'm trying to get to the end of it. I will be doing some bits and bobs for Richard's product just to see what happens. Not a fan of fiber, so the keto bars for me, I'm only going to do one and just see what the glucose monitor does because that's what Richard is interested in. I do think, like I say, I'm very insulin sensitive. I've eaten twice today. Here is my blood glucose monitor right now, flat as a pancake. I need a better thing to say than flat as a pancake, I think. But, it's 4.6 millimoles per litre, which is 83 in the American money there. Yes, and allulose has a glycemic index of 0. Now, I've just released a video with Crabs, and also Nick Norwitt's popped in. And I know that's one of the sweeteners that he tested and really likes. I do worry about the glycemic index as well, because there's more to it than that, isn't there? What happens in the body? What is happening with artificial sweeteners? Do we have the enzymes to break them down, utilize them? But anyway, once you get the sweet taste on your tongue and you get a cephalic response from tasting sweet, does that bring cravings back on? I personally would try to not have sweet in my life. That's one of the biggest themes from my client base as well, is most of them are not moderators. They are abstainers. They need to abstain. And just that little taste will send you going. So for me, I have tried that in the past, and it does set me off down a route when I've had artificial sweeteners and also a flavour that's sort of sweet. It does set me off. I'm better to just not touch it at all. So there you go. And that's someone that's insulin sensitive and exercising, and that's the way it is. So yeah. So Miss Laugh a Lot is saying she needs to abstain, and that's it. I mean, that's basically it. I think that's very common. C main. If you get rid of the seeking for something sweet, you get rid of the search for sugar substitutes, which is a lot of alliteration and never so good. For the person that did the Monty Python quote, I think one of the characters in there could do that. Well, they had trouble with their S's, didn't they? She something sweet. Anyway, right. So it's interesting how the conversation has gone to artificial sweeteners, because I pretty much avoid them for the reason I just told you. I don't really like artificial sweeteners and stuff. But it's a big part of the keto community. It's a big part of some people's life in the carnivore community. But I just wanted to do food. So I did the normal things that you're told are supposed to be healthy, and they're absolutely not. So if you didn't see the beginning, I did put graphs up of where we were with the banana, where we were with oats, where we were with honey, where we were with bacon and eggs, where we were with sourdough, buns, French fried potatoes. And I tell you, the no-nos for me, obviously, there's one other point about the CGM, was the oats, definite. Just oats on their own spiked 20 grams. Half of this spiked my glucose, and the other half I then added a banana and honey. Woo! Put me through the roof even further. So honey, fruit, oats, they're not good. CGM says no. Absolutely, definitely. The CGM says no. So that was my conclusion, really. Sourdough bread, that's good. That has a bigger area under the curve. It doesn't spike my glucose as much, but the area under the curve was huge, which we showed earlier. So do whiz back to see that. And just a bun, you normally have like a beef burger and a bun. That also spiked not spiked, but pushed my blood glucose up. And the area under the curve was not as bad, actually, as the sourdough. So it's all very interesting. And let's get rid of that comment. So I hope you've enjoyed that. No questions have been forthcoming, so that's okay. I only did this because it's National Diabetes Day. I didn't really want to do 50 minutes. I thought I'd only do 20, but I think it was nice that we generated a lot of questions. I'm going to continue for another 2 weeks with the continual glucose monitor. And there's some great suggestions for food here. A plate of lamb. Louise has had a plate of lamb. Great stuff. You know, if I had a CGM, I know that would not go up. Female here is saying I had duck breast and 5 eggs. Good for you. Sounds great. That's one of my favourites, actually. Excellent. And Quick Ben is eating steak now while listening. Great late lunch break. Absolutely. We've got Carol. Braising steak is calling to me. Braising steak is one of the recipes in my cookbook, and also one of the tastiest things you can buy that can replace a ribeye if your budget is a bit restricted. Braising steak is really good. You just have to cook it a little bit slower, and you'll get a really, really nice very similar to ribeye in flavour. So that's good. Very tempted to do a sort of Homer Simpson reaction to the food. But I'm not going to, because I've got very bad teeth from being brought up not eating red meat and not eating saturated fat and eating a terribly high carb diet devoid of decent fats. I've seen everything in my body absolutely get ruined. And by the time I was in my mid-40s, pre-diabetic, lower left quadrant pain, 639 coronary artery calcium scan score. So not smoking and not drinking and doing lots of exercise. So I should have been the poster boy for all of this, and I just absolutely wasn't. I in fact was the poster boy for this way of eating, because it could have been the sort of, if you don't eat carnivore, this is what happens to you. Could have had a picture of me. Anyway, thanks ever so much. Oh, thank you, Cruz, for a super sticker. See, things like this do help. They do help, because that can go towards the keto strips that I bought to be able to continue this for another couple of weeks. I am going to cut down on, and maybe I will do the artificial sweetener. It's a bit difficult for me, but wow, thank you for that. I'm quite touched. That's really good. It does make a big difference. I will continue this for another 2 weeks. Then I will stop, because these bad foods, even these little bits of bad food, are having a huge impact. I don't feel optimal. They don't look optimal, and I want to. So I did a big experiment 5 years ago where I gained weight, 27 pounds, and then lost it, and did a live, and it's 18 weeks to sort of talk about gaining the weight and then losing the weight. I used to do a live on a Sunday. That was a big experiment. So that's nearly, that's a lot of time, nearly half a year. And then in between, I've been doing little bits and pieces with the Keto Mojo and stuff like that. And it's just takes its toll. And it's definitely taken its toll on me. So anyway, I'm going to go before I moan too much. And I will leave you with the big thank you. And Gaza saying, you're the carnivore Jesus suffering for our benefit. I wouldn't go that far, but that's a very nice thing to say. And I hope you all have a lovely day. Don't forget, it's National Diabetes Day. So try and talk some sense to some people, trying to get them off the sugary drinks, the snacks, the Coca-Cola, those sort of things. Try to get them to eat whole foods. That's going to be it. If you want my PDF to help with your family, then email me and just say, I would like the continual glucose monitor PDF, and I'll send it to you. Right now, I'm going to go off. Make sure all the links are in the chat, the YouTube description below. And I will try and one day get all the questions to be near the camera, so I'm not looking down at these questions all the time. But I thank you once again for watching the live, and please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day.